Hello, aviation operations students. Welcome to Flight Operations number 2, the second mini lecture for day 1 of week 10. There will be a mini lecture for day 2 as well, so make sure you keep your eyes out for that. It will be posted later this week. Just getting day 1 posted on Sunday night to make sure you have that available, and Tuesday and Wednesday I'll be posting the remainder of the content for this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at our presentation. So again, we are continuing to talk about flight operations. We're going to look at some trends. We're going to look at some issues that are going on and some other types of flight operations. As you can see here, search and rescue, similar setup also for heliskiing. Some things that are becoming very popular. We're seeing go up, air ambulance. One of the Billings hospitals is now set up an air ambulance in Bozeman. Airline aircraft servicing, aerobatics, aircraft management, companies that manage your airplane for you, aerial firefighting. We've talked about air taxi. I think it's going to be a little while before the passengers get off this particular aircraft. System issues in flight operations. Again, 9/11, we had a lot of changes. Loss of access. We have more restricted airspace. Access to major airports can be limited. And it's not just 9/11. While a lot of it is blamed on us, it's also the fact that aviation activity continues to grow. Airspaces are busier than ever. We have more international flights. We've now added drones to the mix. We're looking at the potential of hybrids and other things. So that's one thing I would like you to reflect on, is the changes in airspace, how that impacts us. And one of the changes is RVSM. So I'm not going to go into this in great detail. I'm going to ask you to take your time. You've probably talked about this in other courses, but this is something that is an impact, and you'll also have a reading in that in the flight operations manual. Again, above 29,000 feet, it used to be 2,000 feet vertical separation, and now it's 1,000 feet vertical separation. But it makes it very important to make sure you're on your altitude. And this started out with work from the ICAO and went to a global standard now. Let's talk about noise abatement. As I had you read the minutes, you saw that there are people complaining about the noise that the flight school makes and how it shakes their houses. I'm a little doubtful that a glider with a lawnmower engine can do that, but that is the view of the residents. And part of it you need to keep in mind is that fear that something might happen and that airplane might crash and hit their house. That's always a little bit of what's going on with the noise complaints. But we have to look at the whole picture of noise abatement and what it means. Often an airport was built someplace with nobody around, everybody built around it, and then the noise complaints start. But it is important. It is a problem. And AOPA and the NBAA have guidelines to help with that. So one of the challenges is there wasn't planning, or now you have people and an airport. How do you plan the patterns to make sure that you have minimal impact on the housing that's around there? When I was working in England, aircraft could not take off before certain times a day, and on what they call bank holidays, kind of like our Monday holidays, you had to take off a couple hours later so that people could sleep in and you didn't disturb them. You might like the sound of an airplane. I love the sound of an airplane, but for some people, it just drives them crazy. And again, often there is an element of fear in there as well. It doesn't matter if the airport's there first. That is true. If you don't like the noise of airplanes, you probably shouldn't have built right next to an airport, but we do have to take their concerns seriously. Having a forum to express their concerns is important. Right now, that is that people can come to the airport board meetings, but if it became a major issue, it is possible that they might have a meeting just on that topic. Taking voluntary action, demonstrating goodwill, encouraging community involvement with your airport can go a long way. Trying to build relationships with the community that your airport is involved in. It's important for pilots to know what the guidelines are, even if it's not a required rule, what are good guidelines to avoid causing noise issues? Instructors need to make sure they share that with their students. And basically all space operators, every FBO needs to be aware of what the climate is around their airport and in the places where they operate. Aviation has a significant economic impact. Changes to aviation change the economy of a whole community. Right now, we have the chance that we're going to look at flights to even more places than ever before. The number of FBOs is increasing. There's a lot of things that are growing at our airport. But keep in mind that the customer base is volatile. Companies now are using Zoom and other video conferencing instead of traveling in person. There's a potential for pilots with health issue. If a pilot gets COVID, even a minor case, there is a potential for lung damage or heart damage or nerve damage that might prevent them from being able to fly commercially. So that's something to keep in mind. As the economy goes up and down, the customer base is volatile. So when you're choosing what services to offer, always keep in mind what the needs of the client base are. Make sure there is a client base that needs the services, or you may have to adjust your services to make sure that you can make money. Again, charter and air taxi operations can be anything from a tiny aircraft to a large jet. Remember, you have rules and regulations that apply, but there's some real advantages. It saves time, no lost baggage. You can make multiple stops on your timeline. So especially for business travel, not having to get to each airport 2 hours early, being able to go from one plant to another, a manager might be able to go visit 3 different plants in one day, where if he had to fly with the airlines, it'd probably be a really long day and he might be able to fit 2 of them in. Aircraft rental. What are the rates? What kind of insurance? You need both liability and hull insurance. What kind of administrative procedures? One of the things is post 9/11, there are some records you need to keep before you can allow anyone to use your aircraft. You have to go through that when you sign up with Summit Aviation. Accounting procedures. Do you take a credit card number? Do you take a deposit? Do you give them a line of credit? Do you provide bulk block rates? Do you make them pay for the flight in advance? What are you going to do to help yourself with that? Another thing is, again, having that positive renter ID. You're going to have a driver's license or a passport in order to allow them to fly. And if they are not American citizens, that can be tougher. What kind of qualification and competence? Are you going to take them on a check ride before you allow them to take the aircraft? Oh, they have thousands of hours in an airliner. I've heard a lot of airline pilots say, hey, things like mountains and stuff are no biggie. If you're going to let them take a Cessna 172 up in this area, that is not a good attitude. So another thing I'd like you to consider is, who would you rent to and under what circumstances if you had aircraft rental as part of your business? Fractional ownership. Advantages are you can own an airplane with other people or buy into it, like NetJet and things like that. Disadvantages. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. From current slide. Disadvantages is there may not be an aircraft available when you want it. Fees and things might increase. So there are benefits and disincentives to fractional aircraft ownership. And that can be anything from 2 to 4 people owning an airplane together or doing it through one of these services. Aircrew ferry services, that is a job, just ferrying airplanes from one place to another when they've had to get maintenance, to come back from maintenance. An airplane that you don't have to be certified to fly passengers. Air cargo, air ambulance and medical evacuation. Aerial patrols, again, we look at the potential of what happens. Some of this will be replaced by drones, but not all of it can be. Aerial application, your crop dusters. I think one of the neatest things I ever saw was I was driving on a highway that was slightly elevated, and I looked out, and probably about 20 feet away was an aircraft right at our level, of course, pulling up as he got to the end of the field. Chemicals, herbicides, pesticides. Aerial advertising, that can be tail draggers that pull banners. It can be skyriders. Aerial photography, again, we're seeing in some places that's replaced by drones, but again, that's not going to happen in all cases. Maybe you do the best bet by doing aerial photography and also having a fleet of drones. Flight instruction. The things to think about: you need to have an aircraft that's efficient and safe. The market constantly changes. It is not an inexpensive business to get into, and it also depends on the other people having money. You can be an individual or part of a flight school. If you are in a group, how is the staffing going to work? Do you have a curriculum you use that you progress through, or are you provided with one? Do you teach ground school? Does the program you're part of teach ground school? Ground school also, by the way, is a very good way to help if people are having a medical issue, or if the weather's bad, they can still teach ground school. But there can be issues. Poor selection process. No company orientation. Hey, you've been teaching, just go out, without telling you what the expectations are. Very rapid turnover, because as you know, many of the instructors are there to build hours, and once they've got those hours and they have another opportunity, they take it. And the pay can be low and can be irregular. There are some places that have a pretty strict limit on number of hours you have to work, and they'll pay you a salary whether the weather allows you to do it or not, and others that only pay you hourly. Or they may pay you a salary, but you could be expected to work as many as 12 hours a day. There's also seasonal demands. Again, in the winter when the weather's not as good. In the summer when the weather's nice, not everybody's here. So we see a seasonal demand for flight instruction. A lot of people don't have a marketing orientation, so they love to fly, they love to instruct, but they're so busy with that that they often don't get out to get the next set of students set up to work with. So important things if you have a flight instructor: make sure you provide good training, that you have a company handbook that has those procedures in it. If you're going to use freelance instructors, make sure that they also are provided with training and a handbook. How is simulator usage going to be handled? How is it going to be scheduled? Who has priority? Is there a curriculum? And again, ground school. Sport type aviation: gliders, parachuting, ultralights, experimental or home-built aircraft, balloons, rotorcraft, sightseeing. There's a lot of fun things you can do with an airplane or various other aviation vehicles. Aircraft sales is yet another area. Are you selling new aircraft, used aircraft? Are you simply the broker or selling on consignment? Are you a dealer, a reseller? Are you providing inspections, or who are you going to get the airplane inspected? Are you providing demo flights for the people who are interested? Are you going to fly to them so they can try the airplane? Do they have to come to you? In aircraft sales, there are decisions you have to make, as well as thinking about what you're going to charge people. Are you going to charge them extra, for example, if you do a full spread on the web page, or is that included? And the manual. If you have a flight operation, you need to have a flight operations manual, and you need to have a ground operations manual. So just as we have that flight operations manual for Southwest Airlines, they also have one for ground operations. And you can see what happens here. If you have retractable gear, at some point, it's very likely that someone is going to forget to put the landing gear down. That is the end of flight operations for week 10. We will be picking up with maintenance for day 2. So stay tuned for that. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Hope you had a happy St. Patty's Day.